Good afternoon. I hope everybody's not too windblown today. But thank you for making it out in probably the first biggest wind of the season to be with us this afternoon. Welcome to Jew Oughta Know with our guest Jason Harris. The program today is funded through Jewish Nevada and our Temple Sinai Board of Directors, and we're so glad that you were able to join us. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If your phone isn't on silent, please do. If you're not familiar with our building, when you go through the lobby, you'll come right to the restrooms. And as far as emergencies, if you need to exit, unless it's an emergency like 911, this door wouldn't open, please exit only through the front lobby. I think that covers us for restroom, phone, and safety. Yes, okay. With that, I'd like to turn over the afternoon to Jeff Gingold, and he'll introduce our speaker. Just so you know the format, Jason will be doing a presentation. We'll follow by Q&A, and then we'd like to invite you to stay for refreshments. Okay, Jeff Gingold.
About 8 years ago, my friend Judy Hirsch and her husband Steve said, "You want to try this new podcast called Jew Oughta Know, hosted by Jason Harris." So I turned on and listened to, I think it was episode 7 or 8, which was as many episodes as there were at that time. I said, this is pretty good. So I went back and listened to the whole series, all 7. Last week, I listened to episode number 201. And I've listened to every episode from number 1 to 201. Several of them I've listened to several times. And I'm not the only one, because a few months ago, Jason learned that it had been downloaded now. The podcast has been downloaded over 1 million times. Jason is an amazing person. He's a San Francisco Bay native. He has a bachelor's in international relations from UC Davis. He has an interesting combined master's from Brandeis University in Near Eastern and Judaic studies, as well as Jewish communal service. And he has teaching credentials to be a high school teacher from San Francisco State University. Jason spent 7 years in Washington as a congressional aide to a representative from California, in Washington. Learned about practical use of international relations, speechwriting, and international policy and such. And then he returned to the Bay Area, and one of his careers at that time was to be a leader of the trips to Israel, the Birthright Israel. How many of you have been on Birthright Israel, or have had kids on Birthright Israel, or grandkids on Birthright Israel? Right. Jason led trips for over 500 youngsters over a period of years. And he said during that time, they would ask him questions about Israel and Jewish history, and he would start to answer, and then they'd have to go to the next site. So he kept all the questions written down and said, I could start a podcast and answer these questions for these kids who have been with me, and maybe their families want to hear that. And that's how Jew Oughta Know was born. Now, 8 years later, 8 seasons later, it's one of the most popular and widely used and understood and appreciated podcasts in the world. It's on all 7 continents. He has a fan who is in Antarctica, who sends him answers and requests, and that fills the entire world now is listening to Jew Oughta Know. A couple more things. Jason is finishing a book on Zionism, which will be out shortly. I was hoping it would be done by now so we could have him sign, but the book will be ready sometime soon. He too. He has also contributed to the blog on the Times of Israel, and he travels extensively now and teaches around the United States. Please join me in welcoming Jason Harris.
Okay, thank you. That was a wow. It's always fun to be introduced because you forget a lot of your life story that then gets reminded. Like I forgot, and I went to undergrad, and all these like, oh yeah, I did that. I remember that. That was great, Davis. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thanks to Jeff especially for setting this up. He's been pushing this for a long time. I know I did a Zoom teaching here 4 or 5 years ago, and then ever since then, Jeff's constantly kind of every once in a while hits me up and says, when are you coming up? When are you coming up? So this is really all credit to him and Jane for making this happen. So thank you so much for welcoming me. I was invited to talk about whatever I wanted, which is very dangerous because what if I said Talmud and tariffs, and then you'd be really stuck. But actually, we started talking about this a year ago and knew that it was going to be around the anniversary of October 7th, and so we sort of left the topic open because we didn't know what was going to happen, and so we just kind of had this vague sort of something will happen, I'm sure. And here we are with something really incredible having happened, very unexpected that I really did not expect, which is the return of the last 20 living hostages, the end, we hope, to this phase of fighting. And so in that sense, I'm really relieved to be here because I thought, up until 2 weeks ago, it's going to be more, war and terrorism and the hostages and things are still going to be bad. And of course, there's still a long ways to go and we don't know what's going to happen next, and we can get into that. And of course, the living hostages are home, and that's the most important thing, but there still are dead hostages that are still being held. And so until they all come home, the immediate crisis isn't over. But this sense of relief really opens up space to talk about what's next. And so what I want to talk about today is what I think is now the central challenge facing us in this post-October 7th world, which is how to reckon with this new era, right? This new world that we've stepped into since October 7th. How are we going to reconcile everything that we've experienced and seen over the last couple of years? I said recently in one of my podcast episodes, I don't remember which one, but I guess there's been 201, that, we've learned over the last 2 years, we've learned so much about our friends and our neighbors and our workplaces and our schools and the media, our politics, our politicians. And so we now, at the 2-year mark, we have to begin the process of assimilating all this, deciding what it means for us, how are we going to relate to these things, what's changed. And so I have a few thoughts on how we can begin to grapple with this. My starting point for this is, it's 2 years later, I'm still appalled at the degree of hatred that has been directed against us Jews the past 2 years. And I don't have to remind you or tell you how widespread it's been, how vicious it's been. There's any number of incidents that we can all point to, whether 2 years ago or whether just recently. I'm still really affected by the terrible murders that took place in Washington, D.C. Last April. Do you remember this? Yaron Lashinsky, Sarah Lynn Milgram, 2 young people who were supposed to get engaged a few days later, were gunned down in the street as they left the Jewish event at the Capitol Jewish Museum right in the heart of downtown Washington, D.C. And their murderer was very clear why he did it. It was all captured on video, why he shot them point blank with nearly 24 bullets. And the reason was free Palestine. So the next day, I don't know if you saw this, the next day the Washington Post ran an article in which they interviewed a few Jews around the country to gauge their reactions. It seemed like a random collection of, they found 5 Jews to call up and interview. And the premise of the article was, and this is the very next morning, was announced in its headline. The Post said that the murders left Jews confused about whether they belonged in America. So two Jews get executed on the sidewalk. And the first question the Washington Post can think to ask is whether or not Jews belong in America, right? Completely preposterous. When Black Americans were gunned down at church by a white nationalist, the Washington Post did not ask whether the victims really belonged in America. When 40, 50 people were killed at a gay nightclub in Florida, the Washington Post doesn't ask whether they belonged in America or not. But somehow with the Jews, it's an open question. Strangely enough, the Post didn't question whether the murderer belonged in America. That wasn't up for question. Whether his nasty ideology belongs in America. Whether the call for global intifada belongs in America. Whether the past 2 years of demonization and intimidation, harassment, vandalism, assault, exclusion, now murder, whether any of that belongs in America was not questioned by the Washington Post, just whether the Jews do. And what's so galling about this, especially for somebody who deals in Jewish history, is how reminiscent this is of a long history that we Jews thought we'd left behind when we came to America. This idea that we're somehow always the outsiders. No matter how much we try to integrate, no matter how much we think we've integrated, the majority still winks and nudge. Oh, of course, we know the Jews don't truly belong here. They're always just the outsiders. We'll tolerate them until it's no longer politically or socially or economically convenient, and then we'll start pushing them out. And before Yaron and Sarah had even been buried the next day, right, the Washington Post reached right for that same old trope. The Washington Post, if they'd had any integrity, should have led with the answer that is, yes, Jews belong. We belong. Wherever we live, we belong. Whatever country, whatever city, whatever college campus is, we belong where we live. That's the right answer. That's the only possible decent answer. But the media seems to think that the biggest story about us over the last 2 years is the small population of anti-Zionist Jews who glorify and encourage and stand in solidarity with the murderers of Jews. People who have separated themselves from our community because they want to signal their virtue to the non-Jews who hate us. But that is not the biggest story. Okay, the biggest story of the last 2 years is the enormous surge in Jewish identification post-October 7th. The outpouring of Jewish passion, the gush of choosing to belong, to stand up, to show up, to learn, to join, to speak, to listen, to do and be Jewish unapologetically and enthusiastically. Now, we've taken to calling this the October 8th phenomenon, or sometimes the October 8th Jews. Not necessarily the most correct name, because many of these October 8th Jews were still Jewish before October 7th. Many of them maybe were uninvolved, or they were unconnected, they were apathetic, they're just busy with other parts of their lives. But October 7th awoke them. Right, whatever small numbers of Jews that we've lost to the hate groups, we've gained in the hundreds of thousands who are pursuing their Jewish lives and their Jewish selves in ways that they never have before. And we can see this in the rise of new Jews. There was an article I read recently with a couple of rabbis in Canada. And if you've been paying any attention to what's going on there, it's headline-grabbing anti-Semitism also circulating freely and openly up there. But these rabbis report that their conversion classes are so full that they now have wait lists. One in particular, Rabbi Taylor Baruchel, is at Holy Blossom Temple in Toronto. It's the largest Reformed congregation in Canada. She says that her students, I want to quote her, are really exemplifying what it is to live with a Jewish identity that is centered in pride and not in being defined by the exterior or in suffering or fear. All right, so this is what makes the October 8th phenomenon so powerful. It's coming from a place of Jewish confidence. Despite everything happening to us and everything happening around us, we have Jews standing up and saying, as Abraham did to God, Hineni, here I am. They're here, they're fully committed, they're galvanized, not petrified by what is happening in Jewish life today. And the question is how we commit back. What new model we can use to answer the question of how to be fully Jewish in this new era that we're living in. How to fully belong on our terms, not the Washington Post's terms. And I say new model because October 7th broke the old one. And I just want to talk about this a little bit because I think it's important that we acknowledge it, that we acknowledge this. I might be treading on some toes here. So if what I'm going to say is uncomfortable, that's okay. You should feel provoked. You should not feel angry. Hopefully some of this resonates. The old model that's not working for us anymore is the Tikkun Olam model. Okay? I'm going to oversimplify, so don't get too upset, but stick with me. For 2 generations now, we've taught that Judaism can be boiled down to one essential value, which is Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam gets translated to social justice. And by social justice, we mean a singular focus on the hardships of others to the exclusion of particular Jewish concerns. We've taught 2 generations now that being a Jew means that you are a social justice activist. And we back it up. We have Hillel's famous phrase, if I am only for myself, what am I? But we've dropped the other part of that phrase, which is if I am not for myself, who will be for me? We've mostly stopped asking that question. So I'll give you an example. As Jeff says, I used to run Birthright Israel trips in the Bay Area. If you don't know what it is, it's a free trip to Israel. It's usually 10 days. It's for young people ages 18 to 27, although maybe they've upped the age a little bit in the past couple of years. It's like a cultural exchange program. You go, you get a bus. There's 40 people on the bus. You meet up with local Israelis of the same age, and you run around the country learning about things. And I've taken more than 500 people on this trip to Israel. And when we're there, I always ask them to talk about how they're Jewish. You know, how do you know you're Jewish? In what ways do they access their Judaism? What does their Jewish identity mean to them? And every single time, nearly every single one of those 500 people will tell me that they are Jewish because they stand up for social justice. Okay, great. Right. What is social justice? Social justice equals the policies of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. They're pro-choice, open borders, criminal justice reform, climate change, anti-gun, anti-racism, anti-Republican Party, you know, all the policies, right? And fair enough, okay, I'm not here to pass judgment on those politics. But when I ask them how that's any different than being non-Jewish and standing up for left-wing social justice, they don't have an answer because there's no real difference for them. And how could they? They don't go to synagogue. They don't believe in God. They don't know anything about Jewish or Israeli history. They don't know what the holidays are about. They don't know how to celebrate them. They don't keep kosher. They don't connect to any traditions. They don't fulfill any rituals. They don't have a social life, specifically with Jewish friends. And even when they had some of those things, they still saw their Jewish identity primarily in terms of this version of Tikkun Olam. And it's not their fault. I don't say this as a personal criticism, so nobody should feel attacked. They never really received any other grounding or knowledge of Judaism to cultivate. They were told it was enough to be committed to social justice and they were good. Standing up for others was enough. After their bar mitzvah, if they even had one, they were done with Jewish learning, right? Instead of Jewish cultural literacy, they got slogans. So they didn't have anything else, or they don't have anything else to hang their Judaism on. Now, this is a profound cultural illiteracy. And the danger that we have discovered these past 2 years is that if you don't know your own culture and you don't know your own history, someone else will tell it to you, which in our case is people who hate us and people who have an agenda. They are taking our story and they are deconstructing our story for the purpose of their story, which vilifies us in an effort to destroy our identity. And our people are helpless to resist because they don't know enough about their own Jewish identity to know what is truth and what is a lie. Now, there's nothing wrong with social justice. I spent years as a senior aide to a member of Congress, so I'm not going to tell you not to get involved in politics. Social justice is great. Tikkun Olam is an important Jewish value. Maybe it's even one of the most important Jewish values, but there are other values. It's time for us to de-emphasize politics and instead elevate other streams. My thing now is I want us to detach our Jewish identities from our political identities. We have to separate our Jewishness from the American culture wars. And we need a new model because October 7th broke the social justice one. I hear this constantly all the time from Jews, young and old, and all over the world. After years and decades and lifetimes of standing up for others, of going out and fighting for others, of showing up for others, all of those people, all of them refused to stand with the Jews when it counted the most and when it hurt us the most on and after October 7th. Jews today need to know that when the social activists betray them like they did on and after October 7th, that there are any number of other Jewish roots that they can look to for that deep sense of belonging that comes from being part of the Jewish people. That when the social activists tell Jews that they don't belong and that they're not wanted because they're Jewish, that there is actually yet a strong, warm, welcoming, confident Jewish community that tells them that they do belong. And so the question is, what's the new model? And I have an answer for you. You thought I was going to do the traditional Jewish speaker thing and just like complain about things all the time, but I actually came with an answer. Our new model is, and this is just me, it's a humble suggestion, take it or leave it, a return to our roots as a counterculture, okay? Turn to our roots as counterculture. We are a people who don't just accept the dominant ways of the majority society. We apply our own wisdom, principles, and ways of thinking, all of which is rooted in a deep history, intensive textual tradition, and millennia of experience. So our model must be countercultural. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. It's the most important event in American Jewish history, okay? Most important event in American Jewish history. It was not October 7th, it's not October 8th, but it is October the 6th. October the 6th, 1965. Most important event in American Jewish history. Okay. October the 6th, 1965 was game 1 of the World Series. The Los Angeles Dodgers, hey, history always comes back around. Los Angeles Dodgers against the Minnesota Twins. And the starting pitcher for the Dodgers was their star player, 30-year-old Jewish American, Sandy Koufax, right? Who may well be the single greatest pitcher in the history of the game. I told you should feel provoked and not angry. But here at the peak of his career, he refused to pitch game 1. Why? Because October 6, 1965 was Yom Kippur. And he said, and I quote, "There are no dispensations for that particular day. I wouldn't feel right about it." Now, Koufax was not the first or the only Jewish ball player to sit out a game. That honor probably maybe belongs to Hank Greenberg in the 1930s. There's a historical debate, which we won't get into. Maybe we can do it later. This was not the first time that Sandy Koufax had skipped a ball game either because of a Jewish holiday. He had a few years earlier, I think 57, maybe 58. He had sat out a World Series game on Rosh Hashanah. So by game 1 in 1965, he told a reporter, quote, "A man is entitled to his belief, and I believe I should not work on Yom Kippur. It's as simple as all that." It's great. So here's why I think this is the most important event in American Jewish history and why we should look to this date for our countercultural model. Okay, it seems like October 6, 1965 is a story of conflict. We're pitting the peak moment of American culture. And you really can't get any more American, right, in 1965 than game 1 of the World Series. It's the height of baseball's cultural power. It's the 2 most racially diverse teams in the league in the middle of the civil rights movement. You've got legendary ball players in this game: Koufax, Don Drysdale, Harmon Killebrew, Mudcat Grant. Any baseball fans with me here? There we go. Yeah. All right, this is the peak moment of American culture up against the peak moment on the Jewish calendar. It's a competition for importance. It's a clash of values. It's zero sum. Only one can win. But there's another way of looking at it. Not as a moment of conflict, but as the pinnacle of the American Jewish experience. Because after all, what could be more American than to have the opportunity to exercise your religious freedom? To have and to use your freedoms in the service of your private identity, your faith, in the service of belonging to your own particular community, even as you remain part of the larger American whole. Sandy Koufax came right back to pitch game 2 the next night. He lost. But this is the American ideal that's promised to us in the founding documents of America. Sandy Koufax gave us that answer to that perennial question of how we can be both fully American and fully Jewish at the same time, right? And the answer is to be both distinct in our Judaism and at the same time to stand unapologetically within American society. He shows us how to not to have any doubt about our belonging here in America, because he united the two cultures in a way that honors both of them. And this part's really important, it was recognized at the time. Walter O'Malley was the Catholic owner of the Dodgers. When he was asked about Koufax's decision, O'Malley said, quote, "I won't let Sandy pitch on Yom Kippur under any circumstances. I can't let the boy do that to himself," end quote. Now, O'Malley did beseech the Pope to pray for rain to get the game canceled so that Sandy could do it another night. Didn't work, turned out to be a really nice day. But this is what Jewish confidence looks like. This is what American Jewish confidence looks like. And it's respected and supported by non-Jews who can see what it is when a Jew has confidence in their own Jewishness. Sandy Koufax did not sit out game one because of politics or because of social justice or because of anti-Semitism. He sat out game one because he had an understanding about something fundamental to being Jewish, and that is the countercultural. He stood against conformity. He affirmed a different way of thinking, even though that difference demonstrated Jewish separateness. And this was a deeply Jewish act, what he did. We look back and we see Abraham smashing idols. And in ancient times, the Israelites challenged paganism, right, by embracing one God over many. Time and again, we were challenged, sometimes violently, by rulers and empires and other religions in just about every country we've ever lived in to adopt their ways of being. And okay, some of us did, and we lost them. But everyone in this room had an ancestor who didn't, or if you converted, you are the ancestor who is starting the new thread, right? Who remained true to our core beliefs and practices, even when that separated us from the mainstream. We are not the ever-dying people. We are the ever-thriving people. Now, Koufax could only have gotten there because of a grounding in traditional Jewish values. He was raised in a secular but strongly Jewish household. According to a few of his biographers, he was particularly influenced by his grandfather, who was a socialist Eastern European immigrant who exposed him to Yiddish culture, literature, art, music, things like that. But wherever he got them from, Koufax was instilled with a conscious and thriving Jewish identity that, again, showed him he can be an indelible part of America while also, when the need arises, stand apart from it. Whether he meant to or not, he found the exact spot, the line of demarcation, where his Americanness met his Jewishness. Yes, he had to sacrifice a certain achievement, but he didn't have to sacrifice either his American or his Jewish identity because he honored both of them. So I want October 6, 1965 to be our model because it shows us how to be proudly and confidently for ourselves, to find that same line of demarcation that we can straddle without apology, without looking to or needing anyone else's judgment. It shows us how to be countercultural and how to be essentially Jewish. There's a number of ways we get there. All are useful and all are important, so I want to talk about that. There's making sure our home life is rich with Jewish content, and not just for our kids, but also for us, for adults. We deserve this too at any age. Sometimes this gets overlooked. But let me start with kids. My family's not particularly very religiously observant, but we have my wife and I have a 7-year-old. She lives in a house filled with Jewish books. We have Jewish artwork. We're always reading the PJ Library books, if anybody knows PJ Library. She goes to Sunday school. She just came back from her very first sleepaway at a Jewish camp. We do Shabbat blessings every Friday night. We celebrate the Jewish holidays with our family and other families. And she's learning the prime ministers because I have little figurines of the prime ministers in my office. She likes gold in my ear. So raising our kids in a home thick with Jewish content that offers multiple avenues of engagement. This is crucial, multiple avenues. But as I say, it's also about us as adults, right? We deserve this too. Let's make sure that we cultivate different ways of being and doing Jewish as well. I recently had an email a while ago from an American college student studying in Sweden. And she was very upset because she wrote to me, there's all this anti-Semitism and anti-Israel hatred being directed at her at this college. She's probably the only Jew in the middle of Sweden there, and she wanted advice on how to handle it. So we had a little bit of back and forth, and I asked her if she was doing anything to cultivate her Jewish sense of self outside of this political stuff on campus. And she actually said yes. She said she had been making comfort Jewish food using her grandmother's recipes. She was reading a book about Judaism. She had found a couple of friends who were interested in like learning about Jews, but not as connected to, not as the part of the current events. Right, but this is good, right? This is positive. This is Jewish confidence. She's pursuing other avenues. And of course, I'm an educator, so I do have to push education and cultural literacy. We need more Jewish schools. Right here in Reno, is there a Jewish school? I don't think so. Is there? A preschool. How old? Is it just preschool or is it just preschool? Okay, right. Listen, you need the Sandy Koufax Jewish Academy here in Reno. I'm punching up the traditional names, okay? Herzl, Maimonides, Brandeis are all great names for school, but baseball is the American pastime, so I'm going with Koufax. Okay, you need a Koufax Jewish Academy, pre-K through 12, maybe even pre-K through undergrad, okay, with a Koufax summer camp that you're going to attach to it. Okay, this is going to be a school here in Reno. You're going to start it. I'm just giving you the idea. Don't ask me how. I have no idea. Okay, a school that teaches the Jewish values and everything behind them so that our kids are going to know why to refuse to play ball on Yom Kippur. We all know that Jewish education, Jewish experience is essential for raising Jews and being Jewish. The early years are critical. But as we've seen the past 2 years, the teen years and the college years are equally vital, and so is all the rest of our years. We need Jewish education to run the full length of our lives. You too should all be learning Jewish. I know a podcast that you can listen to if you're interested. Right? Schools and summer camps, Jewish schools and summer camps, they're fantastic vehicles. They're irreplaceable. They're one of the greatest communal projects of the Jewish people in history. We need to double down on them. We all know the challenges. They're too expensive. They're too far away. They're too few in number. So we need more of them. We need to teach Judaism and Jewish civilization in all its complexities and through all the wonderful winding roads of discourse and dialogue and discussion that we're good at. So let's put our educational dollars into our own institutions, our own schools. If the Ivy League doesn't want us there anymore, that's fine. We'll build our own. Now you have the name. You're welcome. Okay. We will teach the values that we wish the schools were teaching and the Jewish knowledge and the literacy that we wish all Jewish people had. We're going to churn out highly educated, highly engaged, highly motivated, deeply Jewish men and women who have had an entire Jewish upbringing through the Koufax Jewish Academy system that you all started right here in this room. I have the logo already. You got a white baseball with blue stitching and a Jewish star in the center, so it looks like the Israeli flag. I'm set. It's up to you. Go crazy. But all of this reminds me of a story from the Talmud. So in Vayikra Rabbah, chapter 4, verse 6, if you're keeping track, it's written some 1,500 years ago. We read that a pagan comes to Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korcha with a question. The pagan says, in your Torah, in the book of Exodus, it is written, incline after the majority. Incline after the majority. Well, we non-Jews are more numerous than you, so why do you not incline after us and become like us regarding idol worship? Rabbi Yehoshua thinks for a minute, and then he asks the man if he has children. Yes, the pagan says, I have many children. They are my troubles. When they sit at my table, this one prays to the God of so-and-so, and that one prays to another God of so-and-so, and they don't leave each other alone until they've cracked the skull of the other. Well, Rabbi Yehoshua takes us in and he says, okay, well then before you get us to become like you, go make sure your own children are united first. Well, he's telling the story to his students, and the rabbi's students thought the answer was too glib. So they asked him, what's the real answer? How come we don't just do what the majority does? And the rabbi gives this very convoluted answer, but the crux of his response is that when the Torah speaks of Jacob and all 70 members of Jacob's family, it uses the word soul, which is nephesh, in the singular. Not 70 different souls, The Torah speaks of Jacob and his family as one single soul. What does this mean? In the 1890s, Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cook offered an interpretation of this story. It does indeed seem like we're all so different from one another, perhaps sometimes we're even too far apart. But when we act with a shared purpose, when we move together towards a goal, when we devote ourselves to common values, then we deepen our connection to one another to the point where we can be described as one soul in the singular, as a united whole of the house of Jacob. We might not be united in the specifics of what we do or what we think or our political opinions, but we are united in the sense of knowing that we belong to a people, to a historical continuum that goes back thousands of years. Ours is a community that tells each other, you matter. And this too in our day and age seems to be countercultural. We have a phrase, Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Bazeh. All Israelites are responsible for one another. This is one of our most cherished values. And yet, I'm sorry that so many Jews have forsaken it because of how much they hate Benjamin Netanyahu. How many times do I hear this from people? All the time. Jason, I hate Netanyahu. I don't know what he's doing. He's awful. I can't support Israel like this anymore. I don't want anything to do with Israel anymore. And I have to remind people that Netanyahu, this is shocking, is not actually the only Jew in Israel. There are others. Most of them don't like him either. Half the world's Jews live in Israel. These are our people. And in this day and age, we're all obsessed with politics and moralizing. It is countercultural to embrace the people who disagree with us politically, who live under a government we may or may not like, but who we nevertheless have a deep, indelible connection to that cannot and should not be broken. When Sandy Koufax set out Game 1, he wasn't just doing that for himself in a vacuum. He was acting with millions of other Jews around the world, all engaged in their own act of sitting out from mainstream society in order to sit in with each other, wherever they were. He was taking responsibility, not just for himself, but on behalf of all Jews. Because in upholding this Jewish value, I believe I should not work on Yom Kippur, Koufax was publicly affirming the Jewish right to distinctiveness. It was a message to all of us that we too can choose where to mark our own distinction. And as I said, to get there, we have to cultivate multiple avenues of doing and being Jewish. We need multiple entry points. For me, it's history, but there are many others. Culture, philosophy, ideas, rituals, traditions, food, heritage, whatever it is, whatever our avenue is, when we're all pursuing it, we are moving with a shared purpose. So let me put it all together. October 7th was our rude awakening, right? The fear and the anger and the frustration that all came to the surface instantly and aggressively and unrelentingly, and it's been all consuming. It tore apart the model that so many of us had adopted, that so many of us believed that we would be fully accepted if only we joined a particular social and political space. But it turns out we were wrong on both the left and the right. But we don't have to be consumed by that. There is another way. October 6th is our root awakening. It's that one thing that Sandy Koufax did that seems so obvious to him, is telling us something vital and showing us the way forward. And the way forward is to embrace our many values, not just any one in particular. When the political left insists that the highest thing we can achieve is to be a victim, is to win the oppression Olympics by having the most grievances, right? We don't have that. We have chazak, which means strength, right? We refuse to be victims. We refuse to play games with suffering to score social status points. That's not who we are. And then there's the right, which says that they are in a Christian holy war. They hate their political opponents. They hate entire populations of this country, and they want to see them suffer. We don't have that. We have kavod, which is respect and dignity, and chesed, which is kindness. We have a mass media ecosystem that is dedicated to pushing lies about Israel and Jews and Zionism. Artificial intelligence is going to destroy our last vestiges of trust in what we see and hear. We all know exactly what kinds of videos are going to start coming out about us. The only way those things work is because we've all, as a country, have lost trust in the institutions that we depend on for the truth. Traditionally, the media, the universities, government, religion. Here again, we have our own countercultural value, which is emet, meaning truth. We must cling to that and pursue that so that our community can be the institution that defies the erosion of trust and instead builds it. So much of our world seems to be plagued by an anti-intellectualism, a disdain for experts and wisdom, where your resentments and your hurt feelings are considered more important than any knowledge. And we're all screaming at each other all the time. But we have Torah, we have Gemilut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness, we have Shalom, peace, Achavat Yisrael, love of the Jewish people. This is what October 6th is made of. And here's the hard part that I think a lot of us struggle with. We're allowed to apply these values to ourselves, not just to everyone else. We are allowed to prioritize ourselves and to put our interests first. You can't grow a tree with a single root. You can't grow a Jew with a single idea either. Tikkun olam is indispensable, it's important, and it's just one phrase amongst millions of words of text. It's one idea amongst many. It's one value in a whole constellation of countercultural values that we have. Our Jewish selves must be the product of the network of roots that unite together to send a single tree growing upwards towards the sunlight. It's a tree that stands tall and proud because it is fed by so many roots. If one is less nourished, that's okay. The others still provide the nutrients and keep the tree connected to the rest of the forest. We are part of a unique civilization. We're a countercultural civilization. Let us embrace that. Let us live that. October 7th now is behind us. October 6th is in front. Sandy Koufax shows us that we can live our values openly, without hesitation, passionately, enthusiastically. We can be distinctly Jewish and fully American because we are proud Jews. We are strong Jews. We are confident Jews. We can say, this is what I do, this is who I am, and today I simply do not pitch. So thank you very much. That's my message. Q&A now, and I'm happy to take questions, comments, insults, whatever you've got. Thank you.
Jeff and I will be passing the microphone. And we have some online also? Okay. So let's start with one online. Go ahead.
All right. So the first question we have online is, the Sandy Koufax school system model you presented feels like isolationism and self-ghettoization. As a fellow Jewish educator, I absolutely believe in the value of comprehensive Jewish education, but is it really better to have all of our Jewish kids out of the public school system? American Jews have always supported diverse public education.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great question. I love that. No, I'm not preaching ghettoization or that we should completely separate ourselves from society. My kid goes to public school and not a Jewish school, and that's great. And it's a great public school. I think it's really, and also Jewish schools a lot of times are open to non-Jews as well, and that the Sandy Koufax Jewish Academy should be open to all students. Why not? It's a great idea. I just think we need a more impacted environment, educational environment, when our kids are growing up, where they're getting solid Jewish values and education, especially as they get older. And it's harder, the little kids go to Sunday school and it starts dropping off the older they get, and then they hit 13 and they have bar mitzvah, and it's just a cliff after that. How do we keep engaging them? How do we keep them getting the Jewish knowledge that we want them to have? And so I think Jewish schools are, the research on Jewish schools is, unequivocal that kids that go to Jewish schools are, grow up with a much stronger Jewish identity in all respects than most often those that don't. And so I don't think that they're a replacement for public schools. We're never going to have enough to replace public schools anyway, but I think for families who want that high intensity of a Jewish education, I think they're indispensable.
We have one more question online.
Okay.
October 7th, for many Jews, was a tear in the Israel relationship because it became clear that extremists were running Israel.
Mhm.
How do we make clear that extremism is against Jewish values without being branded as Israel haters or anti-Zionists? It feels like you're either with Israel or against her.
Yeah, great question. Well, I think the way to make that distinction is to just make the distinction. It's completely reasonable, logical, possible, and fair to be both anti-Hamas and anti-extremism in Israel in any form. And I don't think that you're right. It is a danger that we fall into a trap of, well, I don't want to criticize Israel because then I'm just handing ammunition to our enemies. But I think it's fair for us to say there are things in Israel that we don't stand for, and we reject religious extremism in all its form, whether it's Islamic or Christian or Jewish. And so I don't think we need to have one or the other, or to hold back in any way. And I wouldn't. If you listen to my podcast, I criticize extremists in Israel all the time, and I don't think anybody would consider me anti-Zionist or anti-Israel, or maybe they would. Judging by some of the emails I get, they do think I'm anti-Zionist and anti-Israel. But I think just being clear about where we stand and saying I disagree with this, and here's why. I think just saying that.
Jason, why do people hate Jews?
Oh, so I'm going to be here for several more hours, I see. Well, you see, in 600 BC, so the ancient Egyptians, this goes back such a long way, and there's so many different ways to answer it. But I think the counterculture is a big reason. Jews are countercultural. People don't like counterculture, and this goes back through ancient history. The pagans did not appreciate that the Jews were saying we just have one God, and Christians did not appreciate that Jews were saying, no, we're not going to sign up for your new, your new religion, and. We're a small people. We've historically been a vulnerable people. We're easy to target. We're hard to defend ourselves. Historically, we're easy scapegoats, and it's really a lot of this is baked into Western tradition, and how the West thinks about philosophy and politics and ideas is from a very anti-Jewish lens, whether they realize it or not. But I do think it comes down to, we stand against tyrants and tyranny, and we are countercultural. And so who's ever in the majority isn't going to like that the way that majorities don't like that. I think that's like the simplest, most basic answer that I can give, but we can go deeper if you want, more. Look, everybody holds Jews responsible for whatever is wrong in their society. Why they haven't achieved the utopia that they can imagine is always because of the Jews. We would have achieved perfect justice and harmony in the world if the Jews hadn't killed our God, Jesus, and we would have had the perfect social and economic communist system if those Jewish capitalists hadn't ruined it, and we would have had the most perfect master race running things if the Jews hadn't come along and spoiled the racial purity of our nation. And nowadays we would have the world of the most perfect human rights and justice, if not for the evil Israel that is destroying human rights. And so everybody's got their utopian ideas. And when they don't work, they point to the Jews as being the ones that are ruining it. And so that's another source of like where this is coming from.
have a question.
I mostly wanted to say to Jane that the reason why Jews are being hated, it's louder. Okay. Every country in our history, long Jewish history, when it goes down the drain, the minority, which we are always a minority in every country, we become like a canary in a coal mine. Okay, so for me, this is clear because I'm coming from Soviet Union. When they start hating Jews, it's the end of Soviet Union. And I hope, I pray that it's not the end of the United States. Because when they start hating us here, it says more about the society around us than about us.
Yeah. I mean, again, just to, go back to the ancient history. I mean, when you look back at ancient history and you look at paganism versus monotheism, one of the things that we have to understand is that religion back then, it wasn't separate like it is now. Religion and politics, religion and state was the same thing. The pharaoh, the ruler, was the embodiment of God, and there were all these gods. So in ancient times, somebody coming along, Jews coming along and saying, we're not with all these gods, we're just picking this one God, that's not just a religious distinction, that is a political challenge. I mean, that's saying we're not going to be ruled by the divine pharaoh as the image of God, because we have a separate God, that we have our only one God. So that's a challenge to the entire political makeup of the ancient society. And when we look at, I mean, you can trace a direct line from intellectually, philosophically, you can trace a direct line from the campus protests all the way back to like ancient Egypt. It's again the figure of the Jew as the one who was really threatening to topple this utopian system that we've built. And every civilization has gone through, in the West, has gone through this.
Jason, I'll try to keep my question brief, but what I'm looking for are the best talking points for solutions.
Right.
But within our, and let's say the American Jewish culture, because I'm sure it's everywhere, but
talking point for what?
Within our culture, within the Jewish groups, there's a lot of discourse. There is a lot of the self-loathing Jew, the Zionist Jew, everyone in between. And it seems like there's no unity on the moral clarity of whatever your social justice views are, the moral clarity of the Jewish plight in Israel versus, like you just said, Netanyahu or Israel, two different issues. We have educators in our university system that aren't even either proud Jews or, again, addressing the moral clarity of the issues. When we are so fragmented within ourselves, how did that happen? And how do we have an intelligent, calm conversation of how did this happen when two Jews are on completely opposite sides?
Yeah. Big question, big answer. Look, for 2 generations, we pushed tikkun olam, social justice. We are people who always stand up for the underdog. We always stand up for the oppressed. Whenever somebody is hurting, it is our job to go and, care for them. And so then along comes the conflict with the Palestinians in the past 2 years. And whatever we think about the conflict, there is no doubt that Palestinians, many of them completely innocent, are suffering terribly. And so, if you're somebody who's been raised with, again, just this one Jewish value, we always stand up for the oppressed. Well, they're in pretty bad shape, so I'm going to go stand with them. And so you're one of these young Jews who's basically saying to their parents and grandparents, wait a minute, you told me I was supposed to stand up for social justice and supposed to stand up for the oppressed and supposed to stand up for any suffering, but now you're telling me don't stand up for the people who we Jews through the Jewish state are causing suffering. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. And so it's Some of it is just, it's really not their fault. This is how they were raised, and that's where you get the split. That's some of it. Some of it is wanting to belong. They want to fit in. What the left has been selling a story for a long time that they're the ones with the monopoly on decency and virtue and righteousness in our society, and that the more progressive you are, the better moral person you are. And if I'm somebody who wants to be amongst that crowd and who doesn't want to be known amongst the decent people of the world, well, then I'm standing with the progressive left, and for the progressive left, the anti-Israel is their number one most important issue. The Palestinians is their most important cause. So I get caught up in it that way, and it's hard to you always have a challenge of the advantage to their side is they get to lie, and the disadvantage we have is trying to counter the lies, and this is always a difficulty. And when I worked in Congress, I worked for a Democratic member of Congress, and the Democrats, we used to always have this is like the meetings all the time, because Republicans are brilliant at the bumper sticker, lower taxes. Great. And then what's the Democratic, we used to have these, the Democratic response would be like, okay, well, so 14 points. Okay, so point number one is we need to have this. Point number two, and but you're done. Like the Republicans have a bumper sticker, and Democrats are coming back with a laundry list of 8 points that they want to, and you're done. And it's the same challenge, right? I mean, that side gets to say, oh, you guys are Nazis committing genocide, right? That's a very powerful thing to put on a bumper sticker. And we have to come back with, okay, well, so technically now the legal definition of genocide, according to the Convention on the Way, you're done, you lost. You lost. And so there is a lot of that sense of belonging, and then there really is divergence between liberal American Jews and what they are seeing as an illiberal right-wing extremism that is, the Israeli government. And so there's just, even before you get into October 7th, from the judicial reform in the years before October 7th, we saw that divergence happening. And so it's like all these things all at once. I don't know if that helps at all. Was that what you're looking for? What are you looking? You're looking for?
You can't talk about anything if
Right.
you don't know somewhat of where it came from,
Right.
intellectually, not emotionally.
Right.
And within our own synagogue, within our own town, and then
Yes.
obviously our state and country, this is a huge problem where
Right.
people are saying, or a Jew is thinking, how can you, another Jew, possibly be thinking like this?
Right.
How can this not be obvious to you?
Right.
How can you not be educated and understand this?
Right.
How can this be so simple? And what about all these other points,
Right.
which would denote what they're saying? So to understand it helps know what the talking points are, or how to come about
Okay.
something.
Yeah. Okay. I think about this a lot, usually in the showers when I have the really good insights about stuff. Because I thought about this a lot, because I get the same things from people, oh, it's a genocide, oh, it's white supremacy, oh, it's whatever it is, how you Jews are behaving just like the Nazis. And, I'm always thinking okay, what am I supposed to say? When somebody says that, every time somebody would ask me in a Q&A or just on email, whatever, and I give them a response, and then immediately afterwards I go that was terrible. That did not help in any way. And what I realized over time, it hit me in the shower, was I was giving responses that were designed to persuade people. Right? Someone comes to me and says, "Oh, it's the genocide," and I go, "Well, let me persuade you. Let me give you a response that is going to persuade you that it's not a genocide." Totally ineffective. Not going to work. For either someone's not interested, or they're coming from an emotional place. They don't want to hear facts. They don't want to. So it's I have to stop. I stopped doing that. Right? I'm not going to give you an answer. So I can give you an answer. I can give you my answer, which maybe will work for some people and maybe not. And it's a little bit long, but it's the answer that I'm going to start giving to people when they start giving me the genocide. Here's my answer. Somebody comes to me and, okay, why are you committing genocide? Oh, okay. Here's my answer. In the Middle Ages, everybody believed that Jews killed Christian children to use their blood to bake matzah on Passover. Everyone believed this. It was a lie perpetrated mostly by the priests in order to vilify and demonize Jews for the purpose of hating us and committing violence against us. And some people knew it was a lie and they spoke out, but most everyone either believed it was true or accepted that it was true or didn't really think whether it was true or not, didn't particularly care one way or the other. And this lie has killed hundreds of thousands of Jews over the last 1,000 years. Jews, though, knew that this was a lie. We knew 100% that this was a lie. We never killed Christian children to use blood and matzah. It didn't happen not even one time. And so we knew it was a lie. We knew that everybody was wrong and that we were right. And eventually, 1,000 years later, everybody kind of realized, oh yeah, this was a lie, right? And nobody really seriously, except in some really ridiculous corners of the world, really believes anymore that Jews killed Christian children to use their blood in rituals, right? You could not run for mayor of New York City. I'm going to stop the Jews from killing Christian children anymore. That doesn't work anymore. But okay, that lie died. Now we have a new lie. The new lie is that Jews are Nazis who commit genocide against the Palestinians. And here it is, once again, this is a lie. It is intended for the purpose of demonizing us and vilifying us in order to legitimize violence intended to destroy Israel. And once again, we Jews know this is a lie. It's a complete lie. I am sure that at some point the world will realize, as they did before, that this is a lie. I hope it's going to come sooner. I suspect it's going to come later. The question is how many Jews are going to be killed before everybody realizes it's not a lie, but there's nothing we can do about that. And so my answer to you, the person giving me this business about the genocide, is I'm not going to tell you to believe or not believe. You can accept what I say or don't accept what I say. I am just telling you that I, as a Jew, know that this is a lie, and I know that this is a lie intended to vilify us. If you want to still believe it, that's your business, believe it, but I know it isn't true. And that's all I have to say about it. That's like the best answer that I've come up with in the shower or in the car over, months of like banging my head against the wall. And it's a long answer. I don't know who's going to stick around to listen to it, but I need a 30-second version for it. But I think the point is I'm less thinking about what are my talking points and more like, because this is such an emotional thing, like, okay, you want an emotional answer? Here's my emotional answer. This is a lie intended to justify violence against me. I know it's a lie. If you want to believe it, that's your business. That's sort of all I got. I don't know if that's helpful. Yeah.
Yes. I have a question regarding. Oh, sorry. I have a question regarding. It's the whole social justice thing.
Yeah.
That I was taught too. I didn't know I was taught that.
Right.
But I don't understand, given the circumstances, why so many Jews will not recognize what President Trump did for Israel. How much hate there is for Trump. I understand.
Yeah.
But why will they, my family included,
Yeah.
will not recognize that he is the biggest friend that Judaism and Israel has ever had?
Yeah. So the question is, why won't they?
Why don't they?
Oh, why don't they? Oh, okay. I'm going to give you an answer you're not going to like. Some of it is just total partisanship. I hate Trump. Nothing he could ever do is ever good. I'm never going to acknowledge anything he does is ever good. Right. So some of it is just partisanship. Right. It was either the last podcast episode or the one before that. I can't remember. But, I said Trump gets most of the credit for this hostage deal from a couple weeks ago. I mean, it was a brilliant use of international relations and American power, and he threaded the needle perfectly, and he gets all the credit for that. But you say he's the best thing to happen to Jews and Judaism, and that's where I completely disagree. I think Trumpism and the MAGA movement is one of the most dangerous things to ever happen to Americans, to American Jews in this country in our history. Because yes, I think he did a fantastic job with Israel over the last few months. I also think he's a dictator. And I also think he and his movement are trying, but the kind of society they are trying to build is one that is not going to be a place for Jews at all. They're trying, and they're coming at it. They all have their different agendas, and Trump's not a Christian fundamentalist national. He's not. That is, for him, it's all ego, and he's got his own situation. But he's surrounded by people in the MAGA movement, which is very much Christian fundamentalist place where Jews are not going to be welcome in that society except as some kind of token for Christian fundamental ideas about the second coming and all this stuff. And so but again, it is hard to thread that needle of I give Trump a lot of credit over here in the Middle East for the last few months. He's done a fantastic job. And over here, when it comes to this country, I think he's the most dangerous thing to happen to Jews in maybe American history. And you got to hold both of those pieces together. So,
and also,
yeah.
Just one other. What about the Jews having killed Christ? Where does that story?
I wasn't there. Where does that story come from? Well, it came from early Christianity that was looking to separate itself from Judaism and did so by vilifying Jews. And so one of the ways they did that was by saying Jews are the ones that killed Christ. And fairly remarkable that for 2,000 years, right there in their book, it says actually it was the Romans that did it, and they just sort of passed over that part and just went straight to. But it was part of the bigger campaign of Christianity wanting to separate itself from Judaism, seeing itself as superseding Judaism in such a way that Judaism was no longer needed because now they had been redeemed by Christ, and so that turned into vilifying the Jews in all kinds of ways, one of which was as their God killers, their prophet killers. Yeah.
Jason, I just wanted to mention to the audience, if you're going to speak, wait for a microphone because we want to make sure our live stream audience is able to participate and hear us as well.
Oh, and I can repeat the questions too.
Okay, here we go. And I've got one right here.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you are a perfect example of what I'm discovering myself. I just finished a book called A Crash Course in Jewish History by Spyro.
Okay.
And what he does, and it is a crash course because every chapter is 2 pages.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's a very thick book because we're a very thick people.
Yeah.
But how it was helpful for me was that he explained Jewish history in the context of what's happening in the politics and the world at the time, not just our Jewish history, but the Jewish history in the context.
Right.
And what you're doing right now by answering these questions is you're showing us that you're an example of what you're proselytizing about Jewish education, really for adults. I think you're an adult, right? Yeah.
Am I adult? Well,
I mean, obviously.
Listen, physically, there's no question. Mature-wise, you'd have to ask my wife. Sometimes she would say.
But you can answer this intelligent question because you know the context of what's happening. And so I just want to emphasize how important it is for adults to learn our history and children to learn our history in the context of what's happening worldwide and over time, and how we do the Sandy Koufax can be after school. It can be Hebrew school afterwards. It doesn't have to be separate from secular education. How we're going to do that?
That's you're right. I mean, but this is where Jewish knowledge is so important. I mean, I am maybe less sympathetic than I should be to the college kids that are running around to the encampments and screaming globalize the intifada and all that. But in my kinder moments, a lot of them, they don't know the answer. They've never been equipped with it, right? So again, when the other side has no shame about using lies and can just say whatever they want because they justify it. So they say something, if you're a Jewish kid and you don't know anything about this history and someone comes up and says, oh, Israel's acting like a Nazi because they're doing this. And I don't know that that's not true. It's like, oh, wow, that sounds terrible. And the other side has very slick people who sound like they know what they're talking about. And so it's very believable. Like, oh, wow, no, I didn't know that. Oh my gosh, my teachers never taught me that. I was lied to by my parents my whole life. Oh my gosh, I better rebel and just sign up with the palace. So it's because they don't know the history, and that's not really their fault. And it is a lot of history to know and a lot of context to know, and it's difficult to get there. But that's part of it, is they're so vulnerable to these lies because they don't know any different. They don't know any better.
I'd like to get your sense. It's been my feeling that all these centuries of persecution has made us a stronger people.
Yeah.
That without this persecution, we might have just assimilated in the rest of society and not been a people. We're not just a religion, we're a nationality too.
Yeah.
And I think the persecution has made us stronger.
Yeah, it's certainly, this is true of any marginalized group or victimized group. It often, builds an interior strength or leads to stronger cohesion. And again, that's the October 7th, or that's the October 8th phenomenon. Is after October 7th, all these people realize, wait a minute, I'm Jewish and this is happening. And oh my gosh, and suddenly they got more interested and wanted to be included. And yeah.
So my question is on the other side of the October 7th conflict. And I just want to say how I came to this question and then ask the question of you.
Yeah.
So like many people in this room over the last 2 years, I've been in some conversations that end with, that are among people I know and know well, that ends with, Stephanie, please explain to me what's wrong with the Jews.
Oh yeah.
And why the Jews are doing this now.
Right.
And I tried to and failed to explain the difference between Jews and a government of the state of Israel.
Right.
I did try,
Right.
but I failed.
Right.
But then I tried to explain the history of the Palestinians, so the other side of the conflict.
Right.
And there I really fell on my face.
Right.
And my goal was to try to explain that in order to create peace, you have to have two sides willing to come to the table to talk about that, and having the authority, the people sitting at the table having the authority of the people that they're governing to bring peace.
Right.
So can you tell me how you would construct a paragraph that explains the Palestinian side, such that when I next am faced with this, I don't fall on my face?
All right, so Chat GPT, just say it louder into my phone. Ooh, wow. Okay. Wow. Look. Jews, the ones that live in Israel, have no choice but to survive there. And when they're weak, Israel's been at war every single day since the day it was created. And it's a war that has never been about trying to capture a little piece of territory or they're angry about something. It is a war to completely wipe them out. And so that is why Israel has had to develop a really powerful military. That is why Jews in Israel ought to serve in the military, because they have no choice. They either have to stand their ground there or they're going to get wiped out. That's the base level of where they're coming from. They're up against an enemy in the Palestinians, and it's not all Palestinians, but it's the Palestinians that have the power, that are the elites of the Palestinian society. And so those are the ones that matter, that make this decision. they have been up against enemies, first Arabs, then Palestinians, now Islamic fundamentalists, who are trying to destroy them, trying to eliminate the country, and not just eliminate the country, but eliminate all the Jews there. And the Palestinians are very clear and have never wavered from this, that they're unwilling to live in a Middle East where Israel also exists. And they have been there, and you can have sympathy for that argument or not have sympathy for that argument, but the fact of the argument remains they don't want peace with Israel. They don't want coexistence with Israel. They want Israel gone. That's what they're going for. There's no way to compromise with that. And Israel feels that it does the things it does because it feels like it has to defend itself against an enemy that is completely uncompromising and doesn't want anything less than their complete and total annihilation, and is unwilling to live in coexistence with them. From there flows how do you defend yourself, and what's a reasonable defense, what's an unreasonable defense, and fine, that's all up for debate and discussion, and that's fine. But what you can't do is tell Jews in Israel, oh, you have to just roll over and die because the Palestinians are mad. Like, that's not reasonable anymore in our history. That's not the game we play anymore. I don't know. Is that helpful? Is that does that do anything? I'm not trying to persuade you. I'm not going to give you the 14 bullet point facts. And so what happened was in 1937, no. You want an emotional answer? I'll give you an emotional answer. It's either this or I'm dead. So what choice do I have? That's it. So that's the best I can do off the top of my head.
We have two.
But when I get in the shower tonight, then I'll really have a great answer. Okay. Yeah.
My question is if you would add, subtract, or modify to from the following.
Okay.
That
did you write this?
I did.
Okay.
It's an answer I gave to my daughter.
Okay.
Right before she fell asleep the other night, and she asked me, why do so many people hate Jewish people and want to get rid of Israel?
Yeah.
And I told her, and it was quick, so I need help.
Okay.
Number one, popular kids.
How old is she?
She's 9.
Okay.
9.
9. Okay.
I said, number one, popular kids pick on kids who seem different, and Jewish people have been different longer than any other people.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll get picked on the most.
Yeah.
Number two, envy. Jews tend to be successful in many publicly visible ways, which evokes envy in groups that have sought to replace and forget, or people who want to eliminate the Jewish people.
Yeah.
And number three, insecurity.
Yeah.
The existence of Israel challenges core prophecies at the heart of replacement theologies, but validates prophecy in the Torah that I myself don't even believe in.
Yeah.
Evoking a tremendous amount of insecurity in people of stripes of faiths that have this replacement theology that this sort of insults.
Yeah.
And envy, and then it circles back to 1 and 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a specialist in 9-year-old education stuff. I mean, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, I don't know if replacement theology or a 9-year-old, maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I think the envy is a great answer, and that's certainly historically been a big part of it. And the envy, and what was the first part? One was envy. The first difference, yeah, difference, straight up envy. And why do they want to destroy Israel? Because that's the Jewish state in the middle of an Islamic world, and the radical, Muslims don't want the Jews there. That's really what it comes down to. They don't want the Jews there, and they have their own deep historical theological reasons why they don't want the Jews there. But it comes down to they don't want the Jews there, and they're willing to kill everybody to get the Jews out, and that's why. Yeah.
So I'm a professor and I work in a counselor education program for a very progressive university.
Yeah.
And I think for myself and most of the people I interact with on a daily basis, there's no real part of my identity that's like completely divorced from politics.
Right.
And the way that I see this come out the most in my specific environment, I mean, you wrote a whole book on Zionism, so I thought you might be a good person to ask, was this dichotomy that either anti-Zionist Jews are self-hating or Zionist Jews are pro-Netanyahu, pro-genocide, pro-evil, whatever. But that just on like both sides of this, there's a lot of we're right and you're wrong and not like a lot of in between. And so I was just kind of curious to hear your thoughts on, in general, how you would define and describe Zionism, but going beyond that, how do we like create space, especially as like Jews, as religious organizations for people who have all different types of feelings, so that it's not you can only come to this temple if you're a Zionist, or you know what I mean, like that kind of thing, or we don't want you at this event if you're an anti-Zionist or not, because I see these terms just be really reductive and really binary. And I know I personally really struggle to have these kinds of conversations with students, with colleagues, especially because no one I've asked has ever given me the same answer as to how would you define Zionism.
Oh yeah.
So
that's in the opening of my book, by the way. Yeah.
So I just wanted to hear some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. You know, what you need are ground rules. So what you need for these kinds of meetings, or if you want to bring people together in this way, is you announce beforehand, here are the ground rules for this event, for this discussion we're going to have, and whatever the ground rules are. We're having ground rules for, we're going to have a dialogue about Zionism in Israel and the conflict. Okay, here are the ground rules. The ground rules are, we are not accepting arguments for, that Israel should not be allowed to exist. We're not going to accept arguments that the Palestinians aren't a real people. We're not going to accept personal insults. You cannot call somebody else a Nazi or a genocidal maniac or a terrorist. That we're not going to accept that. We're not going to accept that Jews are Nazis. We're not going to accept that Palestinians are all terrorists. You have ground rules, and these are the rules for the discussions. And you ideally would publish them or send them out ahead of time so people know going in, here's the ground rules, so that when I go to the event, even if it gets heated, even if people disagree, I don't have to worry that I'm going to get screamed at that I'm a Nazi or a racist, right? Because we're not allowing personal attacks here. That can go a lot of way if there's ground rules ahead of time, and you can shape them for what kind of event you want to have or discussion you want to have, to create a little bit more of a safe space, or at least people feel like, okay, it's not going to descend into just vilification, and insults. So people can feel like, okay, and the people that don't want to participate in that, or let me say, the people that want to drop the insults and scream and yell, they're not going to come to that event because they're not going to get what they want out of that, which is a big dramatic emotional scene. And so I think ground rules is just really, and then holding the ground rules. So when somebody does say, oh, you're a genocidal Nazi, please leave. There's the door. Sorry, that's not what we're doing here. So I think ground rules is probably like the number one thing to get people of different sides, coming in and talking about it.
We have 2 questions online.
The first question is, are those kids who are upset at the treatment of Palestinians wrong? They're being treated harshly and not in accordance with international law. How do we teach how to hold that with our love of Israel?
Wait, sorry, say it again? Sorry. Slower.
Sorry. Are those kids who are upset at the treatment of Palestinians wrong?
Yeah.
They're being treated harshly and not in accordance with international law.
Right.
How do we teach how to hold that with love for Israel?
Yeah. Because love for Israel is not the same thing as love for the present government of Israel. You can be totally against the government of Israel and still have a love for Israel and its people and its culture and the history, and still believe in Israel, without buying into everything that the government does. Left government, right government, doesn't matter. It's just it's a government. Look. it's a really tough question, and this one I never know how to answer this in a really pithy, easy, simplistic way. There is an absolutely terrible war being fought. It is in some ways a war brand new that we haven't seen before. Israel didn't start it. Israel didn't ask for it. Israel didn't want it. It's specifically designed, this war, by Hamas to violate international law and human rights and every sense of shred of ethical and moral decency that anybody's ever had. It was intentionally designed to do that. And there's no possibility of fighting a war without committing war crimes to some extent. That's just the nature of war. It's going to happen no matter what. And so I think all of that has to be taken into perspective when considering, what Israel is doing, what it's not doing, what is happening to the Palestinians are suffering terribly, and they've been brutalized. And Israel for 2 years has been saying this war will stop when we get the hostages back, and sure enough, we got the hostages back, and the war stopped. And so, there it was the whole time. And so I think all of that has to be taken into account when we're, I can't just, it's too easy to just to say, the Palestinians have been suffering. It's all Israel's fault, and therefore I'm going to hate Israel now. But it's not. That's just not the reality. That's sort of off the top of my head.
All right, so I have a second one. It's a little bit long, so I'll try to speak slowly this time. Is the best way to deal with our grief to turn within, or is it to join in solidarity with struggles for multicultural democracy and demand of those we join that they stand up for us as well? I'm afraid this countercultural approach seems too much like an escape. Help me understand. In other words, instead of a countercultural escape, how about a safety through solidarity approach?
Yeah, so instead of countercultural, safety through solidarity. I don't say being countercultural means we should do everything by ourselves. I think having allies and having close friends in your community is essential. What's interesting is, and you were telling me this synagogue has partnerships with all the churches in the area, and you guys do stuff together, and that's fantastic. And I'm not saying countercultural doesn't mean stop talking to the churches. But what's interesting is the mention of grief there, because where I'm coming from is, and again, it's different in different parts of the country. I'm coming from the Bay Area, which is the worst part of the country for this stuff. But again, anytime something bad happens to an allied group, there's the Jewish community out there standing in solidarity with them. And then October 7th happens to us, and where was everybody gone? Nobody showed up. And so, you talk about grief. It wasn't a choice of, we can grieve with others or we can grieve by ourselves. No, they were very clear. We're grieving by ourselves. They're tearing down the posters of the people we're grieving for. And so I don't think the question is, and again, maybe it's a little bit coming back to the ground rules thing. It's not, should we go alone or should we seek allies in the community? But I do think it's fair for us when we go to our allies in the community or other groups to say, okay, you want our synagogue to join your LGBTQ rally. Okay, great, we'll be there. But then we expect you're going to come to our October 7th commemoration. I do think we need to be a little more, I don't know what the word is, reciprocal or transactional, so let's, great, we'll stand with you, but understand that obligate, friendship goes both ways, allyship goes both ways. You now are taking on an obligation. We need your help too. And I don't think there's anything wrong with us saying that. And there are some groups that are going to say, no, we're not going to do that. Okay, great. Then I'm not going to see you at your gay pride rally. We're going to be on the other side of this, rally with somebody else or whatever it is. Just that I think it's okay for us to say, if you want us to stand with you, then you need to stand with us. And again, they don't have to stand with us, raising Netanyahu's visage, marching down the street, but they have to stand with us in our grief and in our October 7th commemorations, and not turn our October 7th commemorations into something about the Palestinians, which has been happening a lot.
So the person back there asked a question in her question, and the question in the question was your definition of Zionism. And I'm wondering if you could circle around to that.
Oh God. So very basically, Zionism is the right of the Jewish people to seek self-determination in their ancient homeland. That's sort of basically it. If you think that Jews have the right to self-determine, then congratulations, you're a Zionist. And if for whatever reason you don't think Jews have the right to self-determination, then you're not a Zionist. Then after that comes the whole book. Then after that comes the whole book. A whole answer. But that's really the basic definition of Zionism. Jewish renewal, and Jews have a right to self-determination in their homeland, just like any other national group of people. And if you believe that, you're a Zionist, and if not, then you're not.
What are your thoughts about the best strategies for countering what's happening in the education world, in the K through 12 curriculum and college curriculum? What do we as ordinary citizens do to try to make a dent in that?
I mean, this is where I sometimes come around to, you need the Sandy Koufax Jewish Academy, because forget it. It's different at different levels, at the local level, being, a presence at your kid's school and speaking up when necessary, so they know when they've crossed the line, and hear that is really important. And we've had to do that at my daughter's school, and they were very receptive, and so that worked really well, and that was actually produced a good feeling amongst the Jewish families, where we felt like our school actually understood what we were saying. And so there's now a higher degree of trust. So being active on the local level, California has been passing laws about the curriculum and what can go in and what cannot, and pushing back against some of the curriculum efforts that have been very anti-Jewish, anti-Israel. So that's happening at the state level. And I think just being really involved, and it gets harder when you're getting into the universities and they're getting millions of dollars in funding from Qatar to push anti-American, anti-Jewish, anti-Israel faculty and curriculum. I have no idea what you do about that, except stop voting for politicians who are in the pocket of Qatar. That's helpful answer. You just have to be in the trenches. You have to be engaged. You have to be willing to go to the school principal and be like, that was not okay. Oh.
I was like, my field of.
This was last year. I have my own issues with IHRA definition, but it's what we have.
Right.
And so there was a vote to take that away. And
right.
I was the only Jewish person,
right,
except for somebody from Stand With Us who spoke up.
Oh yeah.
I was looking around at all the kafiyas going, where are the Jews?
Right.
Me? Are you kidding? But they did not pass it, so it was good.
So there you go. You were the lone voice that. Yeah.
Jason, how do you respond when people say that Jews in Israel are new arrivals and colonialists, or how do you respond to that?
How do I respond when people say Jews in Israel are the colonialists and they're brand new? And the easiest response is, okay, well, what year are we starting history here? What year do you want to start? You want to start in 1948? Okay, there were more Arabs than there were Jews. Okay. Do you want to start in 1880? Okay, there were more Arabs, there were more Jews. But if you want to start history really all the way back, well, then it was a Jewish country. I mean, there were Jews there for thousands of years. They never left. That is one of the really, I think, profound misconceptions, and again, that most Jews don't know about Israel and Zionism, is that Jews never left what was called Palestine. I mean, they were a small minority because they were ethnically cleansed out of there, but they were always Jews for the most part. In Palestine, they never left, and so the idea that they're new is fairly preposterous. They never left. Certainly there were migrations of European Jews that came in because they were getting driven out of Europe. And where are they going to go? They're going to go to the Jewish homeland because that was the only place they had to go. But at the same time that European Jews were coming into Palestine in the 1880s and the early 1920s, you had hundreds of thousands of Arabs coming in from other parts of the Middle East. There are Palestinian families that go back 500, 600, 700 years. There are Jewish families that go back thousands of years, but most everybody else came, Arab and Jew, came in the 1880s, early 1900s. That's where most of the population that's there today came from. So and as for the settler colonialism, Jews did not go to Palestine because they were acting on behalf of a mother country. They were not acting on behalf of a European imperial power. They were not there to colonize, to benefit a European imperial power. They were not there to exploit the local population. They were not there to civilize the population. They weren't going in, taking over the place and then forcing all the Arab kids to learn Hebrew and Jewish, and trying to convert them to Judaism. That didn't happen. Nothing about what they were doing was colonialism. So it really depends on, my first question when somebody asks me that is, well, what year are we starting history? Give me a year. 1492? Okay. But you're telling me absolutely nothing happened in history before, 1948 when Israel was created? Okay, that's an interesting position to take. So when do you want to start history? Yeah. Yeah. I try. Yeah.
Hi, Jason.
Hello.
My name's Jeremy. Thanks for being here. I'm a bit of a political junkie,
Okay.
and I wanted to ask you about really the big race this year that I'm paying attention to is the mayor race in New York City.
Yeah.
And I've been watching the debates, and I was really surprised to hear them ask, what is your stance on the state of Israel? Does the state of Israel have the right to exist?
Right.
And it kind of stopped me because I had to think about, why are they asking them this?
Right.
And the mayor for New York City.
Right.
And then I had to take another step back, and you think about the amount of American Jews, New Yorkers.
Right.
And my question to you really is about the way the media is used to maybe influence our perspective. I asked one of my buddies in Vegas who's proudly Jewish, I asked him, hey, what do you think of Mamdani? Handsome socialist, free buses.
Right.
He's a Yankees fan, big New Yorker.
Right.
Sends me an article from the New York Times, not the New York Post.
Let's ask a question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
1 second. Thank you. The title of the article is Why Mamdani Scares Jews Like Me
Yeah.
by Brett Stevens.
Yeah.
And my question to you is, how do we as Jews what is the introspection we should have when it comes to the way that influences us?
Yeah.
We know what it's like to be influenced by an outside apparatus.
Right.
And if it's disingenuous, I value New York City Jews, but I also question, it makes me wonder how genuine it is, that question regarding the greater world stage. So I just wanted to ask your take on the New York City mayor race and those ideas, which are still kind of murky to me.
Right. Well, look, it's a fair question to ask Mamdani, do you think Israel has the right to exist? Because he does not think that Israel has the right to exist. He was started a branch of Students for Justice in Palestine back in the day, which he's young. So back in the day wasn't that long ago. And you do not that is a hate organization, and you do not become a leader in that organization because you believe in peace and coexistence with Jews and Israel. So it's a fair question to ask. Number one, does he think that Israel has the right to exist? And number two, are there any other countries in the world that he thinks doesn't have the right to exist? Because the answer is surely no. He has no problem with any Arab countries existing or any other countries existing. And so to be, you want to be the mayor of the largest Jewish city in the world, that's a pretty damning thing to have to admit, whether or not Jews, some Jews clearly doesn't bother them that he believes that. But yeah, I mean, with the media, it's always, you have to understand where the media is coming from and what their biases are, and who's running the newsroom, and the New York Times has been nothing if unequivocally clear for 2 years now where they stand on this conflict and whose fault they think it is. And they'll occasionally print an article from a Bret Stephens or somebody else who provides counter thought. But yeah, I mean, the New York Times, I don't believe a word that the New York Times says about, anything. And, so yeah, I'm not sure if that gets at your question, but yeah, I think it's, because I worked in politics, it is fair to ask a politician any question you want, but it's especially fair to ask a question to ask a politician a question that they're running on. And a big part of his campaign and a big part of the appeal that he's been making to people is he is Gaza and he is behind the Palestinians and he is anti-Israel. And so it's perfectly fair to ask him, okay, great, well, let's dig into this even more and force him to answer the questions. He lies when he answers the questions. What are you going to do about it? Yeah.
I do want to just clarify one thing, just because I think it's important to our discourse, and recognize that this could lead us down all sorts of things for long conversations.
Yeah.
And I think one of the problems, as sort of mentioned before, is that we have a very hard time defining terms.
Yeah.
And defining what we're understanding.
Yeah.
And we're talking when the question comes up of does blank have the right to exist?
Right.
I think many of us are talking about very different things. I think it's fair to ask, does California have a right to exist?
Right.
I asked that in Reno, most of us would say no. But there is a general question that most of us don't really think about as to why do entities, countries, and different things exist?
Right.
And what does that mean? What is the basis for that? Is it something beyond they won a war, or they were given stolen land,
Right.
or they stole land, or so on and so forth?
Right.
And I want to raise that because nobody has said to anyone, including Mamdani, to walk through a detailed and comprehensive understanding of when you say right to exist.
Right.
What he has said is that he is opposed to countries existing that have a second class. And he has named countries like Saudi Arabia and Pakistan as also failing the test along with Israel.
Right.
Now, whether that means he doesn't think that there should be any place for Jews to live, or Israel as a country that happens to have Jews, or something like that, is a little bit beyond what anyone has ever really stopped to ask him or many other people.
Right.
But I just wanted to raise that because the headline always reads, Mamdani rejects Israel's right to exist, which is both false and misleading, which is kind of hard to do in one fell swoop. So I just wanted to bring that into the conversation, because I know I've talked with a number of people in this community about that exact thing, and we've looked at those things and heard that. And again, I don't want this entire thing to turn into a long emotional sort of bit on that, but I did want to put that on the record.
Thanks. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, at the end of the day, I just think the whole discussion is so stupid. It's so stupid because Israel does exist. It's there. There's 10 million people there. Oh, it doesn't have a right to exist. Okay, my question is less, do you think Israel has a right to exist? And okay, well, what do you want to do about it? Right? The only way you're going to get it to not exist because it was a mistake is to a genocide. You're going to kill 10 million people. Okay, do you think that's reasonable? Do you think that's what's going to happen? I mean, like, Israel exists, Zionism exists, Jews exist. You can have whatever argument you want to go back. Well, oh, it should never have happened. Okay, it should never have happened, but it did, and we're here, and Israel is there, and if you think it doesn't exist, and so therefore you're justified in committing a genocide against 10 million people, okay, I mean, you can think that, fine. But then those 10 million people are allowed to defend themselves against that genocide. And you don't get to complain about how they defend themselves against that genocide because you just said you're coming to wipe them out. So it's like a proxy argument that just doesn't work, because at the end of the day, who cares if Mamdani or anybody else thinks that Israel has the right to exist, doesn't have the right. It exists. It's there. It's not going anywhere, at least not voluntarily. So that's always my question is, it doesn't have a right to exist. Cool. What are you going to do about it? What do you want to do about it? And the people that scream and yell about genocide are totally fine with genocide against Israel. That apparently does not count. So
that's what they want to do about it.
Yeah. So it is it is a little bit of like a distracting argument that sort of just doesn't make a lot of sense because it exists. So that's too bad. It's there.
We want to thank Jason Harris for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you. I have bookmarks. Please take a bookmark on your way out.
And it's Jew Oughta Know when you want to hear him again. Today's program was brought to you in part from Jewish Nevada and our Temple Sinai Board of Directors. We want to thank Rabbi Benjamin Zober, Tommy Seidel for welcoming in our live stream audience and for setting up the room for us, Jeff Gingold and Jane Townley, who have been pursuing this for months and months and have made it happen. Years and years. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And Jason gave us so much food for thought that we have to give you food. So when we adjourn from here, join us in the library for some light refreshments and more questions and conversations. And I'm going to turn it over to our president, Tova McGilvray, and she'll close us out. One more quick thing, please. Next Sunday, same time, same place, we're going to be talking about welcoming the stranger. And Rabbi Benjamin will be speaking with Jeff and Jane, who were instrumental, I'm not going to give a spoiler alert, in how our synagogue helped welcome the stranger. And then one last thing, if you're open on November 8th, between 2 and 4 p.m. at the Special Collections Reading Room at UNR in the Knowledge Center, there's going to be a presentation of archives, and there are flyers out on the front table. And there's going to be, let me ask Toby, would you finish that one off?
Certainly. So the Temple Sinai was the recipient of a donation of 2 very, very old pieces of Judaica, a Hebrew Hungarian Siddur from 1904, and an edition of Menorat HaMaor, so Masur from 1687. These are some damage. You can see these pieces have lived some life. And recognizing that we were not really the appropriate authorities to store and be stewards of these pieces, we have a Temple board member who is an archivist at the UNR Special Collections. And we had some discussions and filled out some paperwork, and Temple Sinai has made our donation to UNR Special Collections, which these will be their first works of Judaica in that archive. And so on November 8th, this is a reception to thank Temple Sinai as a donor. It is open to the broader Jewish community. So please, anybody from our, Reno, Nevada, who would be interested in seeing these texts, but we will get to see them. We will get to speak with an archivist and especially learn about our access to the UNR Special Collections, that these pieces are there as long as the other pieces in the special collections are there for those of us here in Reno to enjoy for free at any time. So it is not only our thank you reception for the installation of these pieces, but it's our formal introduction and invitation into the UNR Special Collections, which I hope will be the start of many more partnerships. Thank you. I hope that's what you wanted me to say. I just wanted to thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for your warm welcome of our guests. Thank you for being respectful to our guests. We would like to continue to enjoy having other speakers in here. And I'm always very proud as the Temple president to say that even if we heard some things that we felt challenged by, we maintained those ground rules. We were respectful to each other. We had no personal attacks of each other. This is a place, Temple Sinai, I am committed to this being a house of worship. The Torah teaches love and kindness. All the rest is commentary. And we can have some spirited debate on that commentary, but our love and kindness for each other and respect for diverse opinions is part of the bedrock of what we do here. And so if you heard something today that challenged you, this is still your home. Your perspective is welcome at Temple Sinai. That challenging voice is welcome at Temple Sinai. We will continue to worship together, to study Torah, to love one another. And I hope that we can continue to have more discourse like this. So I just really thank you, everybody. And again, if you heard something that maybe shook you a little bit, you should feel even more committed to the idea that your perspective belongs here. And as your Temple president, I am saying that for you. So thank you. And thank you to Jason for a wonderful program. And particularly, I just want to say another thank you to Jeff Gingold, Jane Townley, who came to us as Temple members saying, we want to make this program happen, and really did it through a lot of their own committed personal effort over years. So thank you all. With that, we adjourn, and we will see you in the lobby for more discussion.